So the real tricky part about this assignment is I want you to make a coil mug that matches your slab mug. That's tricky. So we started with the same size base on a board. I don't want to pick this up and manipulate it a lot because I need this to be the exact same size. So I'm going to set this aside for now. And I need to make a coil. And all a coil is it's a long rope-like snake. To make this, there's a couple different ways of doing it. I do it by hand. There's also a thing called an extruder, and I'll show you that another day. But I take my clay and I kind of turn it into a log-type shape. Then what I do is I give it a little twist, and then I roll it back and forth. I give a little twist, and I roll it back and forth. Notice I'm going from fingertips to palm. And I'm going to make this look pretty easy because I've done this a lot. That little twist does help out quite a bit. Notice each time as I take a little break, I give it a new little twist. And look how this log is getting longer and longer. Because as I'm applying pressure down, it has to go somewhere, so it starts to get longer. Give my little twist, and I'm going to work it out from the middle to the ends. If I get any thicker spots, so right now this spot's a little thicker, this gets a little bit thinner, it gets a little bit thicker at the end. I'm aware of that on my next go. I'm going to push a little more in the middle. I'm not going to push as much here, and then I'll push more as I get to the end. So I'm always kind of adjusting as I go. So notice how long my coil is. It's the length of my desk now. In fact, it's going off the end of my desk on the other side. I look at my coil and assess, are there any spots that are thick or thin and I need to adjust? So this got a little bit thicker here. So I'm just going to work that section a little more. And it got thicker at this edge, but I don't have enough room. I'm just going to rip it off. Everybody does coils differently. I like to work with the thicker, fatter coil, and look what I do to it. I give it a little tappy tap. So my coil ends up being about 1 inch tall. Notice how it's pretty consistent on my ruler edge even. It's about 1 inch tall all the way down. Here's why I like to do that. When you're building coils, because I'm using different consistency clay, I'm going to take a little bit of water with my fork. I'm going to scratch up this edge where it's going to attach. I'm going to scratch up this edge where it's going to attach on my coil. Notice I'm pretty aggressive with this. It's like Velcro. And now I'm going to run this all the way around until it attaches with itself. And notice how I can rotate the block. That's fine. Okay, here's the tricky part. I need to make this match my other mug. So I know that I need to set it on top of this circle because that's how I did my other mug. And I know I need to make it go straight up. So when these two overlap, I cut through both at the same time. And now they attach beautifully. I'm not going to worry about smoothing this in and attaching it on the outside yet, but I am going to do the inside because I can get there. Notice with the slab, I didn't have this option. I couldn't actually get in here and smooth this inside out. This is where a banding wheel is super helpful. And the cool thing with the slab is that it builds so quickly. The cool thing with the coil, I have more control. So I can really control the shape of this. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and build the next coil on top. So again, roughing up this edge, I just kind of splash my fork into some water. Notice I'm not like super careful and like all like, oh, I'm so worried. I'm not worried. If I set my coil directly on top, it's going to keep building it straight up. And that's what I want for my mug. However, I'm going to show you if I change things, just so you know. So this is going to make it go straight up, which is what I want it to do to match my other mug. What if I took this coil and I set it to the outside edge? Notice how I can start to make a bowl. Notice how that shape starts to change. That was exciting. That shape starts to change and it starts to flare out. Or I could make it flare in depending on how I set that coil. So that's really all there is to coils. The hardest part is making them. Once you get really good at that, this is a really fast process too. So I can whip up a coil mug in about the same amount of time as I can a slab. I keep stacking, and in between each stack, I smooth it together. So I can stack about 3 coils before I really need to start worrying about smoothing it. Now, where do you make the little cuts line up? Some people make it line up on the same place all the way around so that every single cut lines up. I don't. I stagger them. I think for the strength of the piece, I'd prefer to stagger. I feel like that just makes it a little bit stronger, and it makes it easier for me to be able to connect them. That's just a personal preference. So then as I get towards this top and this third one, I can also start comparing how tall does this need to be to match my other mug. Notice how thick this is and how thin this is. When I start smoothing this together, that's when this is going to start getting thinner. So as I start kind of working, I don't know if I can show this very well. As I start working this and smearing this together, it's going to erase those seams, and it's going to start to make it thinner, because as I'm applying pressure, you can see when I start to push this down, it's going to make this thinner. So you don't want to start at the same thickness as your slab, or you'll end up way too thin in the end. So I will go ahead and smooth all of this together so you can see kind of that finished piece and then how I can make it match this other mug next time. But that's how you do a coil mug. That's the next step. And your goal is to make them match.